and start.
Welcome to the 2022 Sunflower Syndrome Family Symposium sponsored by Massachusetts General Hospital. My name is Tricia Bruno, and I'm an epilepsy and research nurse coordinator for the pediatric epilepsy program at MGH.
And I am Dana Dallas. I am the research and dietary therapy program nurse coordinator for the MGH pediatric epilepsy program. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Amy and Joy, two parents of children with sunflower syndrome, and discussing how they manage life with their children and families. Amy and Joy, do you want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Amy. I have two children. I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son, Cole, that has sunflower syndrome. I am also a second grade teacher, and I do not teach in the same district that Cole attends school.
Hi, I'm Joy. I also have two kids. My oldest, my son Nicholas, is 11 years old and he has sunflower syndrome. I teach 4th grade and I'm lucky to work in the same building that my son attends school.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here today. So we'll just jump right in. So our first question, Amy, if you can start us off, can you tell us what your journey was like from the start of symptoms that you noticed for Cole and to when he was finally diagnosed? Were there any diagnoses that kind of came in between there? And, when did it start? Just kind of take us through that journey.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that was definitely a long journey. Cole was 4 years old when he started showing symptoms. That was his 2nd year of preschool. We were very fortunate in that he attended the same preschool the year before, so we had the same teachers and the same staff who were well aware of Cole. So when things started to change, they were definitely helpful in noticing their observations and comparing them to our observations. From there, my husband and I started researching as much as we could to try to figure out what was going on with Cole. And we just weren't hitting the right words or phrases in Google searches to match what we were seeing. He went through, we took him for blood work. He met with pediatric ophthalmologists. We tested him for undiagnosed long-term strep to see if any of those things were causing what we were seeing, and we just couldn't figure it out. My husband and I then realized that the symptoms we were seeing were related to the sun and that Cole had an intense need for the sun. The hand waving was always directed to the sun, and that he was startled if we were to call his name loudly in the middle of a hand wave. From there, our pediatrician was really helpful, listened to us, and we made an appointment with a local neurologist. And that was a little bit difficult for us. The neurologist told us that it was a tic and that if we ignored the behavior, that it would go away. So we tried that for a little bit until our second appointment with the neurologist. And during the second appointment, I asked the neurologist if we could go to the waiting room where there was a window, if he would watch Cole. And he said it wasn't necessary. And then he basically told us that when his peers started to notice, and there was a lot more focus on Cole, that his tics would go away. Right there and then we knew that the neurologist was not for us. They just didn't feel right. There was a lot more going on, we thought. That was hard to hear. We were there to kind of prevent, that. So from there, we went back to our pediatrician. They gave us another referral to another recommended neurologist. And we were on a waiting list. We got on the waiting list and we waited for our appointment, and our first appointment was canceled. We waited and they told me that if I called the day that somebody canceled, that we could then get bumped to that day if we could just run right up there and get there. And I said, absolutely. Since I'm a teacher, I'm very fortunate in the summer to have some extra time. So I would call 3 or 4 times a week to see if there was any cancellations. And they would just stop answering the phone. So during we had our second appointment that was not canceled for this second opinion, that was canceled on us as well. So we waited 6 months for this one neurologist for both appointments to be canceled. So from then and there, we said, okay, we're gonna try somewhere else. We went and made an appointment at Boston Children's Hospital. We didn't have a recommendation for a neurologist there, so that's why we were hesitant to go there, but it worked out fabulously. While we were waiting for our appointment for the Children's Hospital, my husband, we finally came across on a Google search of another child, similar hand waving from a parent that had posted. So we now then had, like, it was life-changing, like a term, sunflower syndrome. And then we could start like searching. So we started to feel better in the sense that we had like an avenue now. Boston Children's was very helpful. Their neurologist like listened to us. They watched all the videos on my phone that I had taken. They said that they had never had a patient with sunflower at that time, but they thought it was sunflower. They agreed with us. We came in with that term thinking from the little research that we had done. So they verified that they thought that Cole was presenting with sunflower syndrome. And they recommended that we take a mobile EEG home so that they could kind of see what was really going on. I suggested at that point, I said, if you just need to see the hand waving, we actually don't need to go home with it. We could sit by your window and within, a couple seconds, you will definitely see what you need to see. So that's what we did. He got hooked up to the mobile EEG and sat in the waiting room at Boston Children's. And my husband's job was to press a clicker on the mobile EEG to track, and my job was to write down the time, my observations, and what I was noticing and the duration of the hand wave. And within, as I'm sure Joy knows, within like moments, like I was running out of paper, there was nowhere to write. And I think there was more than 100 absent seizures within of like maybe 30 minutes. And that was with us stopping Cole through some of those. So from there, we went on a medication. We had some discussions. And then I found the amazing Facebook group, the Sunflower Syndrome Photosensitive Epilepsy Peer Support Group, through a search. And that has been a tremendous help. From there, I would read every single night, everybody's posts to try to get more information. And I realized that lots of people were talking about Boston and I wasn't understanding why. And that's how we came to find Dr. Teal and her team who have helped us through this journey so much.
Thank you so much. That's just incredible story. And I really appreciate you sharing all that. Joy, would you like to share as well about y'all's journey?
Sure. In many ways, Nick's journey is very similar to Cole's. Nick started to show some symptoms when he was also in preschool. He wasn't actually hand waving at that point, but his teachers called us in for a conference and said, we're concerned that your child might be autistic. And we said, really? We've never had anything that made us think that before. And they said, well, sometimes he kind of stares off and doesn't respond to us. And we came to watch him at preschool, and sure enough, we were like, he acts very different, but only in this particular room. At the time, we didn't know it had to do with the lighting in the room. It was very early on. As he got older, this kind of continued until about first grade, when the hand waving really began. Initially, it was mostly when he was in outdoor light, but after a few months, it pretty much progressed for him to be hand waving in front of any lights. So lights in our bathroom, lights in our kitchen, lights outdoors, which made life pretty difficult. Just like Amy was talking about, we took him to the pediatrician and he was diagnosed with a tic disorder. We tried to ignore it, didn't go away. So then they referred us to a therapist who worked with children with tic disorders, who decided, no, Nick probably had OCD. And so they decided that they were going to do exposure therapy. So you can imagine that having a child who has a seizure disorder connected to the sun did not do well with exposure therapy in the sunlight and actually continued to worsen. And it was at this point that really the pediatrician and the therapist very much thought it was still OCD. But his first grade teacher said, "Do you think he's having seizures? That's what it looks like to me." And we said, "Well, we mentioned that to our doctors and they really just don't agree with us." And she even called his therapist to talk to him, and they were like, "No, no, no, it's definitely OCD." And if you have a child with sunflower syndrome, you know there are certainly OCD components that to this, the compulsive turning towards the sun, but we knew it was really not something that was within his control. So that was when I began my Google search, and I came across probably one of the same videos that Amy found. And right away I called my husband in and I said, "Oh, you have to look at this. I think I found what's going on here." And we said, "Oh, it has to be the sunflower syndrome. It looks exactly the same." So I continued to look and I found Dr. Teal's name online. So I called her office, and I think it was Trisha I talked to. And right away they basically said, if you think your child has it, they probably do because you're going to know. And luckily, this weekend we're having the Sunflower Syndrome Conference. So why don't you come? And I said, "Well, he's not diagnosed." And they said, "You just know. So why don't you come?" So we came to the conference before we'd even had any appointments with Dr. Teal. And she saw him at the conference. And I remember she walked right up and said, "He definitely has sunflower syndrome. We don't even need an appointment to diagnose it. You can just tell." And in fact, he has a pretty severe case. So for us, it was really just Googling and coming across her name. And then I found that same Facebook group, and being able to go on there and get more information from other parents was just great. It made us feel like we weren't so alone and floundering and confused. And so that was our journey. A lot of misdiagnoses along the way.
Thanks, Joy. And Amy, those are really, I think, true to form. It seems to be what a lot of people go through. So what do you two think you perceive as, what are your biggest concerns related to your children who have sunflower syndrome? And how have you been handling the path and navigating that path to, understand your questions? And
I think so. Cole, we still do not have control over, his epilepsy. We've definitely learned to change our lifestyle, but it's still very excessive, and Cole is still very unaware of it's happening. So I think my biggest concern is definitely his safety. And then, the possibility always that it could turn into tonic-clonic seizures, and that he's being supervised and that there is somebody there to help him.
very valid concerns. And how about you, Joy?
For many years, my major concern was also safety, and also just Nick's ability to manage school with his condition. We are very fortunate. We tried many medications, and he really wasn't responsive to any of those. And we had him tested for allergies, and we found out he was allergic to some foods that we've cut out of his diet. He started to get allergy shots, and after that, his seizures started to just disappear. He went from having seizures pretty much constantly all day long, even in a hat and welder's glasses and indoors. It was to the point where we almost were thinking about pulling him out of school because it had gotten so severe. And then when we got some of those triggers under control, he improved dramatically. We haven't seen a hand waving seizure with him since October. But even with all of that good news, I think my biggest concern is just the unpredictability of sunflower syndrome and not knowing if this is a permanent relapse, if it's gone away, if he's going to have different types of seizures as he gets older in the future. So I think there's still that just uncomfortable feeling of not really knowing what's in store for him.
Sure. Again, very valid concerns.
I think too, I also worry about, Cole's confidence. Like I just want that to keep building. And, as he's getting older, that, his peers and, people around him just help support him versus, bullying that, we hope doesn't happen.
Right.
Thank you, guys. Well, speaking and kind of going off of concerns, for a lot of families, we know school is really tough because it's a time where you don't have as much control as you do at home over the environment and what's going on. Can you walk us through some of what y'all have done in terms of like accommodations for Cole and Nick at school and helping them even when they're not at home, kind of help with the symptoms and stuff when they're there?
Sure, absolutely. Some definitely general ones where Cole's back is to the window, and where the teacher is pulling the blinds or the shades to the windows. Those are very helpful. Um, Cole's first grade teacher explained to me that in his school, children with diabetes have their medication in a little pack that travels from teacher to teacher. So wherever that student is, whether they're at art or at lunch, that bag is with him. So that has been very helpful for us because we have an extra pair of sunglasses in a bag for Cole, along with his emergency medicine. So that travels with Cole from teacher to teacher, so that if he ever needed it, the nurse needs just to get to Cole. If there's a fire drill, he has an extra pair of sunglasses inside that bag. So I think that gives me a huge sense of relief that that's there for him. The other thing that we tried with the school is I found some light filters. This is the package and I can send the information. Basically, they go over with magnets over the lights. So I have them in my own classroom, and then Cole's first grade teacher put them up in his classroom, and she says it really made a difference. So those light filters travel from teacher to teacher as Cole goes into the grades. So I think the light filters have really made a difference, along with the bag of the traveling medicine has given me a sense of relief. Those are some of the major ones, and also extra supervision at recess. So there's somebody that has eyes on Cole, so they know where he is. And I'm sure, Joy, you can add more to this.
Yeah, Nick, when he was having seizures a lot at school, we had all of those accommodations in place for him. But even with preferential seating away from windows, sunglasses, hat, all of those things inside, he still was pretty much having seizures all the time. So he actually ended up getting an IEP because the phys ed teacher said he would need to have an IEP in order to have adapted PE, because they would need to adapt the program. He really couldn't even be outside for part of the year. And the district decided to give him a one-to-one aid. He really had to be pulled to like a completely dark environment at times throughout the day. That we were very lucky to be able to manage something like that. His need, I think, was just so great at the time that anybody who saw him at school just could tell how much he was struggling. He had a little bit of a different like presentation of sunflower syndrome. When he waved his hand, he would hit himself in the face to the point where his face was bleeding during the day. And I think it was like very alarming to his teacher. So he ended up with an aid. And he no longer has one anymore, but we still do have all of those things in place. We also had dimmer switches. The district installed dimmer switches in whatever classrooms he goes to, so the teachers can adjust the light accordingly for him. And that has really been very helpful. Also, the teachers seem to really like the ability to adjust the light. So I think it's been great for a lot of kids in the class. I did at one point write a pamphlet, and I'm pretty sure that Trisha has those that kind of go through some more information for school. I think my biggest advice as a teacher and as a parent, getting to kind of see both sides, is that uh, it's very hard sometimes to advocate for what your child needs at school, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so I always encourage parents of my own students or parents I talk to whose kids have sunflower syndrome. You just sometimes really need to push the school kind of hard to get those accommodations you need. So, getting your child something like a 504 plan because they have a medical condition is very helpful. Depending on how bad it is, they could also qualify for an IEP. I even really would encourage you to think about just the academic needs your child might have that go above kind of just the basic safety needs. I know for Nick, because he would have seizures, he would get very lethargic and tired very easily. He would need extended time for activities. He might need alternate locations for activities. Sometimes he would need extra time for homework or for projects because he would just be so exhausted trying to get through the school day. And I think all of those academic pieces too, it's important for parents to know that schools can provide all of those things for kids who have sunflower syndrome too.
That's great advice. And we do have pamphlets available that Joy helped co-write with us. We can send out or post online. And turning to sort of, how about like outside activities for your families aside from school? Amy, we know you are a very outdoors family. How do you manage with Cole, and how do you keep him safe in sports activities?
Yes, so definitely just, he has more supervision than another child without sunflower. Like, we're just constantly aware of where he is. And I'm sure everybody knows, like, we have the hat and he has the hat, he has his sunglasses, he has contacts. Those have to be on at all times, but I'm sure the same old story. His sunglasses are on top of his head more than they are on his eyes. So continuous reminders all the time about the sunglasses on his eyes, and then just bringing him into the shade as much as we can direct him. So yes, we spend a ton of time outdoors, and there's been a couple of things that we've definitely changed in order to help Cole. My husband had this great idea. We're very fortunate to have like a big yard, and there's like a lot of woods. So from the distance of our house, we can see from the window, he built a tree house for the kids. So it's awesome in the sense that they go there a lot. They're in the shade, they're playing in the tree house and underneath the tree house. So it just kind of gave us a focal point sometimes in the yard where they can go play without the constant interruptions of the sun. We also snowboard, and we were very worried about that. We go at least definitely a full week in February every year, and with the sun glare off of the snow, we were very worried. But we have found a really good pair of goggles, and combined with the goggles and the helmet, Cole, we don't see any instances of hand waving while he's snowboarding. And I'm happy to share like what brand of goggles and everything with everybody. I can send that to Trisha, but these help him immensely. Now I know that we're not seeing the hand waving and things are still going on inside of his head during that time, but just for him to be able to enjoy a sport outside, one that we didn't know that would be possible, it's just huge. He also loves bike riding, and he has a small ATV. So we put him into BMX racing. The BMX racing helmet and the ATV helmet are very similar. They're a full face helmet. So there's this huge visor that comes down, and it's kind of like squishing their faces a bit. So it really cuts out lots of the sun. And when he is riding, we don't see any instances of those absence seizures happening. So we're very happy with that. He's currently playing soccer. It's indoors right now, which is hugely beneficial. And he's got, you know, doing well with that, and we'll be transitioning to outdoor soccer soon, but he'll definitely have his hat on and his sunglasses on. Cole loves to swim. So we do not have a pool, but my in-laws do. And we're in Rhode Island, so there's oceans near us. So how can you not live in Rhode Island without going to the ocean? So we just have to plan accordingly. We go to the pool, we kind of time when my in-laws pool is in the shade. So during each month of the summer, we know when that pool is going in the shade, or at least 3/4 of it. So we're most often swimming like after dinner time, just because that's what's safe for us. And if we head to the beach, we will probably grab dinner up there, and we would be there more at like 6 or 7 p.m. when the sun is really setting, so it's just not so bright. So that's how we have learned to kind of deal with some of the fun things that we do. Cole does kayak with us as well. We are right on the side of him, but during that time, he has his sunglasses on, a big brimmed sun hat on, and his hand is on the paddle. So the sunglasses are actually staying on his eyes. So when he has all of that in place, he seems to be fine. You know, it's the times when we're in line at the ski resort when he'll pull the goggles off and the helmet off, like it's those in between times when you're going to get lunch or a snack that we're seeing it. So we're very happy that Cole is able to enjoy a lot of the outdoor things still. We just have to kind of be very careful, and he's much more supervised than I think another 9-year-old would be.
Sounds like an amazing life. You're able to make it all work. That's great.
We're trying.
Dedicated parents. Joy, anything special for you and Nick and your family?
Nick loves swimming. That's his biggest sport. And we would always be a little bit worried about the glare off the water, but we ended up finding some Speedo goggles that were kind of a cobalt blue color. Mm-hmm. And as long as he wears those, he doesn't seem to have any trouble until he takes them off. And then we have trouble, just like Amy was saying with Cole. So those goggles really helped him to swim. We would still, like Amy was saying, time our pool visits for when the sun was not going to be at certain angles. We noticed certain times of the day were more difficult, so we would just avoid those times of the day for swimming. Nick's other sport is horseback riding, and the great thing about that sport is that sometimes he can go in the barn if it's really sunny out, and the helmet has a nice brim, and with the helmet and the goggles, and the focus on holding on to the reins, he does pretty well with that too. So I think it's true what she said, that just taking those precautions and maybe giving a little extra supervision, you can still go outdoors and do lots of fun stuff.
That's great. That's great. Horseback riding, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's an awesome sport. Well, thank you so much, Amy and Joy, for sharing your personal life, your thoughts, and your insights on how to help your children. I'm sure this is going to be very helpful to other parents of children with sunflower syndrome. So thank you again for participating in our family symposium this year.
Thank you.
Thank you.